Hi, I'm Lana,
And I'm Sherri.
and this is Real Estate Tips with SNL. Sherri, who do we have today?
Today, we brought in Randy Lewis. He is the owner of ICL Appraisals. So he is our local appraiser contact for today.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Great.
So Randy, give us a little background on yourself.
Let's see. When I got out of UNH, I was living in New Hampshire, and I went to work for a real estate agency called Berman Real Estate.
As a real estate agent?
No, as an office manager and relocation specialist, but that's a different point. But they wanted to open an appraisal department about a year or two after I started there. So the owner and myself took some appraisal courses. We also spoke with some appraisers, and we opened an appraisal department.
Wow.
And that went for about maybe 6 to 8 months. And I wanted to be an appraiser. So I had to leave that and become a real appraiser, not someone trying to open an appraisal department.
Yeah.
And that was about 40 years ago.
Wow.
Wait a
Yeah.
minute.
Wow.
So was this new in the industry? Like no one else had a department
very,
like that?
Very new, because before that, you didn't need an appraisal. The board of directors, whoever from the bank, would drive by the house and say, yeah, that's worth it, and let's give him the loan. He's a good guy.
Talk about changes in the
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's prehistoric times.
Yes, it was.
we're back
Yeah.
back in the day. Back in the day.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you opened up so that did they feel the real estate department, did they feel that they needed to learn value?
No, it's just another income stream. They're trying to develop a department it was a
Interesting.
2-story
But
office
you weren't
building.
hired by the banks.
We were not at the time,
Interesting.
but we were preparing for that.
When did that get introduced?
yeah.
Oh, let me see.
Put you on the spot.
The early 80s.
Oh,
early
okay.
80s, talking about 40 years ago. And then I became involved with Northern Financial Services. You may remember Larry Marshall, Ray Dennehy. I was in my mid-20s, and I worked for them for a number of years and went out on my own after that, probably about 30 plus years ago. And I've been doing it ever since, except for I took a different route for a couple years. Remember the frozen yogurt shop down at Searstown?
Yes.
That was mine,
Ah.
with a partner, along with one in Nashua, Stoneham, Beverly, and Walpole.
Oh.
Then the retail market soured. We closed our shops and went back into real estate appraisal.
Interesting.
Now, becoming a real estate appraiser has definitely changed, obviously, over the years. As there are a lot of courses that you have to take, hours to get licensed, and again with the CEUs, things of that. Do you know? Right now to become a real estate agent, it's 40-hour
Class.
real estate class. What is it on an appraisal?
Of class, I believe it's 60 hours to become a licensed appraiser, but you also become a trainee first. And you're a trainee for a while. You've got to get, I think, 2,000 hours or something like that. Don't quote me on that number, because it's been a long time since I
Right.
was getting licensed.
Right.
But in order to be certified residential, you have to have a bachelor's degree. And
A bachelor's
degree, yeah. So, and most banks, lenders, the FHA, they require a certified appraiser. They didn't grandfather in the certification requirement with the FHA. So a lot of appraisers that were appraising FHA appraisals for years that didn't have a 4-year degree got tossed aside to someone new who had one but never did an FHA appraisal in his or her life.
So I have that on my list here of questions, the difference between an FHA appraisal, a VA appraisal, and a conventional appraisal.
With FHA and VA, there are some minimum property requirements, as you might have experienced when an appraiser, FHA or VA, goes out to look at the property. They've got to look for certain things like peeling and chipping paint, handrails, any sort of safety issues, security issues, and they've got to make the appraisal subject to repairing those flaws. Whereas a conventional appraisal doesn't necessarily require that. If it's a Board of Health issue, yeah, the bank might require that, or a safety issue, bank might require it. But with the FHA and VA, those items have to be done. They're conditioned on the appraisal.
So let me ask something. I'm going to butt in. Let me ask something.
Yeah.
These FHA rules seem antiquated a little bit.
A little bit.
I understand the safety stuff. I understand, trip, fall, hazard, blah, blah, blah. But this peeling paint
I know.
sometimes is, to me, a little antiquated because I feel like when I'm looking at a house, sometimes there's a little bit of chipping paint on the outside or on the backside of a garage or something like this. So, I mean, is this get looked at? Does anybody look at these rules and see about changing any of this? I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah, I think they're starting to change them a bit.
Okay.
Just in the beginning right now, though. Don't quote me, but I think they are based upon what I'm seeing in my trade journals I get. I see exactly what you're saying. I think the FHA is trying to protect against the wood deteriorating.
Yeah.
And so they're calling for that type of repair.
See, I thought when I was thinking peeling paint back to like lead-based paint,
Right.
older properties, so occasionally you're going to get something that's not as old, and I'm thinking, well, why do we care if
I
it's
know.
got some,
I know.
but, I didn't think of
It's the maintenance.
Maintenance.
the maintenance side of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Pre-1978, it was lead-based paint. After
Yes.
it was illegal. Lead-based paint is actually superior quality paint over what they use now. But
Well, think about the fuses and the circuit breakers. We could have a discussion on that. But you said something about the Board of Health. So, what would be a Board of Health call out, leaving on a conventional? Have you had a lot of that?
haven't had a lot. A lot of things are grandfathered in, but
Okay.
in a bathroom, a non-porous enclosure is required. Board of Health around the tub and shower, tile, fiberglass, Marlite. If they've got wood
Or sheetrock.
or sheetrock or
It's
plaster, it's not a water resilient
Yes.
surface.
Well, what about that lovely shower curtain that goes all the way around?
That, yes, a lot of times the appraiser can use his or her discretion.
Okay.
Well, because you have that clawfoot tub
Yeah.
with that little
Right.
thing. You can
Right.
have that, right?
Yes and no. It's sometimes
Really?
the appraiser's discretion.
No way.
Yeah. What about
Sometimes.
stoves? Like they always say that you can. The only appliance that really matters in a house is
It's
a
not,
stove.
right?
Is that no longer the case? Is that
FHA and VA, it is.
Correct.
Okay.
But
Cooking
not
facilities,
conventional.
but not conventional.
so you no longer need a stove?
Well, you don't, but every lender makes their own rules.
Right.
And one bank may require it, one bank may not.
Right. So that's not at the discretion of the appraiser.
Right, but the
Okay.
appraiser should note that in the appraisal.
Of
No
course.
cooking facilities.
Yeah.
What don't you appraise on a piece of land? Like, what don't you appraise? Like, if you're on there and see the buildings and the outbuildings and blah, 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 what don't you put a value on?
We've got 6 or 7 or 8 sheds. How many sheds does a typical buyer or homeowner need today?
Okay.
Some, will add value. The rest are just excessive.
Got it.
As far as
Swimming pools?
above ground, no. In ground, some appraisers do, some appraisers don't. I do. But you get nowhere near the value of what you paid
Right,
to
put
have
it
put
in.
in. Yeah.
I was thinking more on the lines of like that in-ground and stuff like that. But what about like, outdoor fireplace? People do outdoor kitchens and things like that. And you
Yeah,
don't get that,
it's-
right?
You really don't. It's an over improvement.
Okay.
As you know, it might increase the marketability of the house.
Yes.
The saleability. But as far as value, some people look at it as a maintenance issue. I got to maintain
Yep.
this outdoor kitchen.
Yep.
Or this beautiful landscaping. I've got to maintain that. I want a simple lawn. You have to look at it through a buyer's eyes a lot of times.
What about waterfront properties?
Depends on the body of water.
Okay.
Um,
So if it's next to a swamp, it doesn't really have
Not
the same
really.
No,
appeal.
but like say it's a full recreation lake versus a, just a canoe place.
Canoe place, yeah. Like Hickory Hills is very shallow versus Fort Pond or Lake Shirley. Well, obviously, when you're appraising a property on Lake Shirley, you want properties that sold recently that are on Lake Shirley and not Hickory Hills, and vice versa. Compare apples with apples, oranges with oranges, or to similar other bodies of water.
So surrounding towns that
Surrounding towns, if they're similar in market appeal, yeah.
I've got a great question that everyone asks me. I have a large lot of land. I know my neighbor sold and I have identical house, but I've got a bigger lot.
Yeah.
So tell me what you do. So let's just say there's a 2-acre minimum, okay? And this property has 10 acres and 800,000, feet of frontage.
Yeah.
So what's the difference in value for that?
A lot of times that's excessive land, surplus land. Depends how much frontage you have. It depends if you've got city water, city sewer in the street. So you've got potential for developing if you've got enough frontage. And so a buyer may consider that. If you only have enough frontage for one lot, but you've got like 30 acres behind you, how many acres do you need?
Can you give a value for potential lot?
The banks frown upon that because down the line, a year or two, what if they subdivide the lots off and the value of what they loaned on goes down
Yes.
because there's less
Correct.
land, less potential? So when we look at it, we're looking at it as one lot, no matter if there's like 1,000 feet of frontage
Yep.
or 150 feet. It's one lot.
It's great information.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great information. What do you find gives the most value to a property for a renovation? I know a lot of my clients say, should I rip out the kitchen? Should I do the bathroom? Should I do my basement over? Should I, whatever. What do you think is the biggest return?
I think kitchens. Kitchens, everyone wants a great kitchen. Everyone's cooking now, and bathrooms are important too. They're right up there with kitchens, but kitchens might surpass. But you have to look at the kitchen and bathroom in the house. What if the bathroom is like old and the kitchen was updated maybe 15, 20 years ago? You got to make a decision what to do.
So are you giving more value? So you go into a house that has an updated kitchen, and that bathroom might be retro.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Sometimes that old
Yep.
has value because it's so well maintained.
Yeah.
Yep. But are you giving? I mean, there obviously is an opinion of value on that. But if you see a kitchen that was just over the top done, and then the next house that's identical in the same subdivision, has the original kitchen, then this house has more value, but is probably not what you paid to put the kitchen in.
Probably not, because kitchens are so expensive these days. But it'll be a sizable difference.
Nice.
It will be. Depends upon the price range of the house, the size of the kitchen, size of the house. A lot of factors come into play. An updated kitchen on a 1,000 square foot ranch will not add the same as a 4,000 square foot colonial with a 600, 800 square foot kitchen. Percentage-wise, it would be similar, but not dollar-wise. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, explain that a little better for the
Well, say
listeners.
the house is selling for $300,000.
Yep.
It's a ranch, 1,000 square feet, updated kitchen.
Yep.
Maybe an appraiser would give it 5% for
Yep.
it, which is $15,000.
Okay.
And but $800,000 home,
Yep.
updated kitchen is bigger, newer. 5%
Because it's bigger.
is going to be $40,000.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it's a bigger.
A bigger price range. That's why I'm saying
Yeah.
the dollar will be different based
Yeah.
upon the price range of the
Right.
house.
So you're saying it's not a set, like it's a 5,000 to 10,000 they
Right.
give for an updated kitchen.
Right.
What about finished basements? Let's talk about what do you give? Like, how do you determine? I know a lot of people say, well, I've got 4,000 square feet. I got 2,000 here and I
Yeah.
got 2,000 there. And I'm like,
A lot of brokers put the finished basement in the gross living area too. And we've got to go into the field card
Yeah.
to see, okay,
Double
the
check.
broker's counting in the finished basement, which you can't do. We have new standards. We can't count the finished basement area into the living area,
Okay.
the square footage above grade. A lot of factors come into play on finished basements. The quality, the age of the finished basement. If it's above grade with some daylight windows and a walkout, or it's below grade with those little cellar windows. So a lot comes into play. You have
If it's above grade, can you throw it into your square footage?
how do you get an above grade basement?
it has to be completely above grade.
I know.
So I was
Completely.
just thinking, well, my old condo, it was my basement because my garage was there, but the whole thing was above grade. So it was called the basement because it's a split, but it was completely above grade.
100% above grade.
I don't believe it was 100% above.
My
grade.
old condo? Sure.
No,
100%.
The front is your.
You had to walk upstairs to get to it's a split. So you had to walk upstairs to get to the front door. And when you came inside, you either walked downstairs to the basement or walked up to the first level.
I'd have to see it.
So
But I've never seen a condo that was
the whole
100%
thing,
above.
the whole thing was above
Do you have
grade.
a garage?
Yeah.
So it could be 100% above grade. Still, ANSI, it's ANSI. You heard of that? I think we had that over in Winchendon, Town Farm Road. Wants us to include the basement separately. I myself, most of the time, will value a finished basement on a per square foot basis. $10 a square foot, 20, 30, 40, it depends. How much above grade it is, it's going to be worth more. The quality of it, the age of it is going to be worth more. If it's completely below grade, you've got a bulkhead, if you even have an exit, worth a little bit less.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What if it's got a bar?
Yeah. Dance floor.
Like-
Karaoke.
Karaoke stage. I don't know what I'm talking about.
All these things are running in my head that consumers ask all the time to me. But what do you find is the hardest property to appraise? Style, age, anything in our area.
Really old properties, like built in the 1700s, are very difficult. Properties on a lot of acres, that's difficult. I've got one I'm doing tomorrow. It's built in 1781 on 40 acres, but they've leased out 30 of those acres. I've got to figure out.
Oh, that's
value
tricky.
on that.
Very, very, very tricky.
That's tricky.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more factors with that.
There's more complex appraisals than others. I love doing ranches in Leominster.
3-bedroom, 1 bath,
3 and
1
bath.
car garage.
Yeah. All day long.
And it might have a finished basement.
Right.
What about new construction with our queen of new construction? How are
Right.
you getting those appraisals at those prices?
Thanks, Lana.
They're up there.
No, I understand the value
Yeah.
of the new construction and the cost to build, right? And I'm just curious, like, I know a lot of buyers will say to me, "Well, can we bid lower? What if it doesn't appraise?" And I'm thinking, I don't think it really comes to appraise. I think it's the cost of building it.
It's a couple of things, and I'll let you answer the question, but the price of land has gone up like everything else. So when the builder is paying a premium for that lot, and additionally, the building requirements, codes have changed. So the cost to build has also increased.
Exactly. July 1st, those
So, the
changes
new one's
into
July
effect, yeah.
1st. There were some at the beginning of the year. It's constant. And then obviously the cost of building materials, and then labor, and all of that gets factored in. And suddenly that same house that was built a year ago is now selling for $100,000 more in just 12 months. But that's everything else that's added to it. So then we're coming to you and saying, make this house worth $100,000 more because that's what it costs to build it.
Right. As you know, cost doesn't always equal value, but that's a different conversation.
Right.
But what we have to do is hopefully get some similar sales that sold a month ago, 2 months ago, maybe same builder, maybe same development, subdivision. And if we can't find those, hopefully there are some pending sales that we can use to support any sort of increase over the properties from last year that were being built. So it's been a challenge for a few years. Yeah.
I always say we're not comparing apples to apples. It's apples and oranges, and because of that, there has to be an opinion of value, which I had mentioned before. When I'm doing a market analysis, which is of course different from an appraisal, we're not using the same technique. But I'll say, the seller might have an opinion of value, the buyer might have an opinion of value, I've got one, and then you've got one. And at the end of the day, the opinion that matters the most, depending on, the transaction itself, is probably your opinion because it could B, whether or not this is going to come together. Because if their two prices don't match, or they do match, but not to what you had, the bank may say, sorry, we can't lend that amount.
Right.
So there's no pressure.
Yeah.
Not much.
Do you, when you're doing the appraisal, you're coming in probably sometimes even a couple of months after we've set the list price. Sometimes we're meeting our clients in advance and then we're finally going on and, we're meeting the list price. So are you finding that you're working with comparables that might be outdated sometimes by the time they come to us?
Well, I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
Yeah.
We see the property, say I'm seeing it today.
Yep.
October 30th. I'm looking for comps. I first look for comps. I hate that word. I like comparables. Maybe I'll go back 30 days. If I can't find it, I'll go back 60 days.
Okay, so
90s.
you're not going back 6 months.
If I have to, I do.
Right,
I
but
prefer not to.
Right, so you're basically doing what is actually happening.
Right. What I like to do on mine is get some comparables that are within like quarter of a mile, if you can. Some places you can't. Half a mile. And if they're dated 6 months, okay. As long as they get some more recent ones, maybe outside the neighborhood. One set is reflecting the location, the other set reflecting time, the current time.
Well, that's good to know. That's good.
I'm going to go back to the things that you add value for.
Okay.
Because things that come up, couple of things. Garages. So you've got a property that has a 1-car, 2-car, 3-car, 4-car garage. Bay. What do you give for value when it's over what's considered, average?
Well, that's another one that's dependent upon the value of the price of the house. I've seen, I review a lot of appraisals too for some banks, of other appraisers. I've seen adjustments made, garage versus no garage, $5,000 per stall, $7,500 per stall, $10,000 per stall, up to $20,000 per stall. Just depends upon the price range of the house. A garage is going to be worth more in a house that's selling for, say, $800,000 than it will in a house selling for $200,000.
That makes sense. I just remember maybe 10 years ago asking the question, and I was told $5,000 per bay.
Yes.
But after so many bays, there's no value.
Right.
I was trying to sell a place that had a garage that was more of an outbuilding with 10 doors on it, and I'm like, is that worth $50,000? What is that worth? And nope, sorry, not. Now you got to find a property that has the same thing. Well, good luck, it doesn't exist.
I would more likely call that, instead of a garage, I'd call it a barn.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
It's detached. It's got that many stalls. It sounds huge.
Yes.
Call it a barn rather than a garage.
Yeah. Appliances is another one. I've got somebody who's put in a kitchen that has Wolf or Viking or these high-end, very expensive appliances, and I've been told before that the appliances are not included in the value. Would you include for an upscale property that has that type?
Most appliances are considered personal property, except for the stove that's built in. Microwaves are built in now, dishwashers are, but the refrigerator, washer, dryer, those are considered portable because they can be easily moved. But high-end appliances, you're going to expect those in a very expensive house, and if they're not there, that's going to make a difference. You're not going to expect it in a smaller house that's in like the $300,000 price range, $250,000. I don't think they're that low these days. You don't expect that in a house like that. And a typical buyer may not pay extra for those because they're not looking for that type of thing.
Right. Okay.
So it's an expectation to have that.
It's an expectation for the high-end houses.
But even sellers who are thinking of taking the refrigerator with them or taking their washer and dryer, and then a buyer who puts it in the offer, it's just more of fluff piece that was added. It has no value to either take or leave it, but it could make a difference in satisfying the deal.
It could, but I don't think a washer, dryer, or a refrigerator the lack of would kill a deal.
No.
What are other things that people, for value? I always think of the swimming pool. I always think of the outbuildings because I always and the acreage. People always say that.
Well, location is key.
Gosh, we didn't even
Location.
Yeah.
So tell us about the location. Like, how does that affect busy street? Where it's located, near a highway? Is it on a dead end street? Tell me everything.
Again,
tell me everything, Andy. Come on,
give us everything.
Yeah, we've got to find comparables that have similar locational influences. It's not always possible. Sometimes we'll go to a neighboring town. But if you've got a house, say, selling on North Main Street in Leominster, you should be able to find one or two comparables, whatever you want to call them, on North Main Street or a similar road with similar traffic issues. And you just got to compare them that way. It's tough to put a dollar value on someone who's living the house on Main Street versus, Elm Street or Rose Ave or something like that.
So do you give more value on a dead-end street versus a busy street? Because I think of, for instance, some main streets in some of the towns, people love to live on Main Street.
Exactly. Depends what town. The
right.
town of Sudbury,
Depends on the people.
And that could be a higher value versus the outskirts, because the outskirts has no connection with what the town offers.
Right.
Being on Main Street, that value goes up. So I guess it's per town and per area. And
it is. If you're on a street that has a 50-mile speed limit, 40 miles, because it's a main drag.
Yep.
But in the smaller towns, for example, Sudbury is a beautiful downtown common with these older homes. You're not flying through, so it might have some appeal. Petersham, it's weird because it's a nice downtown, nice commons, general stores, but people are going pretty fast down center of Petersham.
What about a private road versus a public road? Is there a difference in value for you on that? I mean, some of these private roads you wouldn't even know are private. It sort of comes out later. They're still paved and they're still getting mail delivery.
I just did one in Leominster. It's on a private road. Never thought it was a private road, and I found out it was. It's publicly maintained. It's maintained by the city of Leominster, plowing, sanding, everything else. But I was lucky enough to get a comparable on the same street.
Wow.
So it reflected that. It reflected that. So no one could ever tell it was a private road unless they researched it.
Right.
So is there value difference?
Not really.
Okay, you just try to find something comparable with it.
Right. Right.
I was trying to sell one years ago in Leominster, and it was just a little dead-end street subdivision that the builder had never closed out. I guess the bond was still there or whatever, and we had to go through, hanging out with the mayor and the assessor's office and trying to clear that up because we couldn't sell it. And it was something I think the appraiser had called out, but there had been other sales in previous years that didn't get called out, and but it's now public. We took care of that.
That's what happened to Carlson and Fitchburg. Remember that subdivision off of Goldstone?
Yes.
He walked away from it, and the city ended up finishing it. The roads and sidewalks.
What about city water, city sewer versus septic and well?
I've never had anyone prefer a septic over city sewer. I've never seen that.
Nope.
I have seen homeowners and buyers prefer a well over municipal water, though. So everyone wants to be on. No one wants to replace a septic system.
Correct. But is there a value difference?
Again, you need comparables that also have private water, private sewer.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you've got to, with an appraisal, you've got to reflect. You've got to compare apples with apples. I know you said you can't always, but
no.
In towns where a home has private water, private sewer, most likely there are other sales.
Of course.
That have them. In Leominster, if you have someone with private water, private sewer, that's pretty rare.
It's rare,
Probably
but it
up
happens.
on Elm Street, maybe.
My old house over on Leggett Hill.
Really? Yeah.
Leggett Hill, but also the little bit of side roads. But you're right. You have some cities that have just these little pockets of the septic versus the municipality.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it really comes down to apples as much as possible.
With appraising, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
With
Oh, I got
appraising.
another question. We're just going to hammer you with
There
this.
we go.
Okay?
Love it.
All right. I'm just thinking. Sometimes I've gone into a house and it looks a little distressed, and you're trying to determine whether or not it would even fly with conventional financing, or are you going to need a rehab loan? Where's the fine line on that?
Distress cosmetically?
So you walk in. There's it's plywood on the floor, and somebody's punched a huge hole in the wall.
But the heating system works.
But the heating system works.
House is habitable.
Yeah, it's gross,
Yeah.
but it's habitable.
Well, it wouldn't fly with FHA or VA
No.
without required repairs.
Yeah.
With conventional, we would make adjustments in the appraisal, estimating what it would probably cost to repair those and make the adjustment that way when we're comparing it to another house that doesn't have those issues. But as far as a hole in a wall, subflooring for flooring, those are all issues that we would contend with when we're making adjustments in the process.
So it could be a lender call on that.
It could be a lender call.
Yeah.
They may see the pictures and say, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I think more of the rehab is about like things that it's not habitable, meaning like the heat doesn't work. There's no water.
Right,
There's no
right.
power.
Well, I feel
Yeah.
sometimes you've gone into a room where they've pretty much stripped it down because they were planning to
Right.
renovate that room,
Oh,
and you're
right.
looking at a framed wall instead of drywall on it. And I'm like, well, you kind of need walls. You kind of need walls.
You do. You can't have exposed wiring. I think any lender will say something
Got it.
about that, exposed
Okay.
wiring. So yeah, you need some finished walls. But if they're not painted, taped and mudded, that's probably an issue, a condition that you can make an adjustment for. The estimated cost to do that, $3,000-$4,000.
Right, right.
But if it's exposed wiring, that's a whole new ballgame.
Okay, all right.
Interesting.
I'm trying to think. I feel like I've shown a house where it says, do not step on the deck. It's not safe,
Yep.
And I'm like, well, how does that fly? Now we're talking about a safety issue, and I know that wouldn't fly with FHA or VA. Would conventional say no problem? You don't need to step on your deck to live in the house?
Right. I just had one the other day. It's new construction. The deck wasn't finished.
Ooh.
So you open a slider, you go out.
Not my builder.
A deck that just joists.
Yeah.
They GC'd it themselves.
Oh, okay.
But they had the proper barricade over the slider, so you can't access that
Yeah.
deck. They had a block at the stairs that you would go up, so you couldn't access it. So they took care of all the safety issues. And so now it comes down to what's it worth? Well, you have no deck, so you
Correct.
can't get value for a deck.
What about flood zone? If a property's in a flood zone, does that give it less value or does that not come into play? I know you're going to say you got to find a comparable home.
You do, but that's not always possible. There
Right.
aren't a lot of properties in this area or in flood zones.
But there are some.
There are some. A lot of times what you'll see is a portion of the site will be in a flood zone,
Yes.
but the improvements won't.
Okay.
And I see that probably 90% of the time when
That's
there's a
fair to
flood
say.
zone issue, the improvements are in the flood zone.
That's fair to say because they can't probably, but okay.
I think after we're done here, I'm going to have 100 more questions that
Okay,
pop
write
in
it
my
down.
head.
I know. Do you find owners of property are calling for personal appraisals?
Yeah, I'm doing one this week. What I tell them is there are great brokers out there who give you a pretty good opinion of value.
Do you need my card?
There she goes again.
So I said, either you're going to spend $450 on me to give you an appraisal, which you're going to have to spend anyways when you buy the house, if you're not paying cash or anything, or you can, and I'll do it, but there are good brokers out there with plenty of experience, both of you, who could give them a reasonable opinion of value of a property. So I tell them, why don't you call a broker first, save yourself the money. Oh, I already did. I spoke with two of them. Okay, fine. Then let me know what I can do. But
I think if you've gotten, 2 or 3 market analysis, they should all be within a range.
Yeah.
These
They don't
were way
have to
apart.
be exact, and that's where it's challenging too. But even if it's way apart, maybe your price is somewhere in the middle. I only one time in my career did I say to a seller, "We need to get an appraiser in here. I cannot get you the market value. This is just way too unique, and the appraisal came in far lower than both of us had expected.
Yeah.
And when the offer came in, it was far higher than the appraised value. And then you were doing this when it was under agreement. And, now we have a new appraiser that's coming in and, it appraised. Which brings me to the next thing, because we hear this all the time. Because people think that they've got a deal. I bought this house, I negotiated the price down, and the appraiser came in, and it came in $1,000 above the purchase price. How come it's not showing the $50,000 that I think that the house is worth over what I'm paying?
First of all, for an appraiser to come in $1,000 over or under the sale price, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. We're not God.
It's common.
If a buyer and a seller agree that they're going to buy the house for $300,000, the seller's going to sell it for $300,000, who are we to say it's worth $301 or $299? I mean, that comes into play what the buyer and seller are willing to take and give. I don't know if that helped you.
Well, it does. It does. I mean, I feel like that an appraiser's job in this, in a transaction is to make sure that that the purchase price can be supported,
right, and
that's really what it's about.
Right.
But I think that for the parties involved, they're hoping that the number is different,
yes,
that it's actually higher than what they're paying, or if it were, maybe it's a situation where somebody needed to sell it fast and discounted the price. You might have a buyer who's saying, great, because I'm going to have instant equity when I buy this house.
Right. Yeah.
But you just don't typically see that in an appraisal. It's generally at value, or it's just a hair above. And I've seen them just a hair below, and I'd go, really? Come on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. We're not God. We can dictate. Someone, like I said, $300,000. Oh, I'm going to make it come in at $299.5.
Yeah,
that's not realistic.
Right.
We have a range of values that we come in after we do all the adjustments, 3, 4, 5, 6 comparables, and there's a range.
Right.
And we try to pick the most similar comparables and look at those closer and develop an opinion of value there. Another appraiser may come in a few thousand higher, a few thousand lower, or 10, 20, 30,000, depends on the price range of the house. So all the 3 different appraisers will probably come in at 3 different values on the same property.
Right.
But they all should be within a certain range if they're doing the job properly.
Right. And for the simple reason that we're not pulling the same comps necessarily, where it's, you're finding what you can. And at the same time, we're trying to support the value. That's what it boils down to. Nobody's trying to kill a deal,
right?
Which I get, and I think that a lot of people are just trying to understand. Even for us, when we're coming in and doing a market analysis, well, all right, we used Zillow that says our Zestimate is this, and well, they didn't come and see your house,
right? That's what I asked the buyer or the seller or whoever, well, Zillow says we're at this. I says, well, when did Zillow come into your house and speak with you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they say. But when you say kill a deal or make a deal, I learned many years ago, I was in my 20s, which is a long time ago, I was doing an appraisal, and Larry Marshall owned the company, and I was coming in below price. I said, Larry, it's going to kill the deal. He goes, Randy, we're not in business to make deals.
Right.
So I got it. We're here to give the opinion of value, not to make deals.
Right. I mean, if value's not there, you can't make it up. Yeah.
And I love the fact that appraisers are reaching to us, and I mean, I go to my appointments. I know that might have changed and some people don't, but I go, and I don't go because I'm trying to hide something or do something.
Right.
I'm actually learning every time I go, because I'll ask, what does this do? But what I like about it is the appraisers ask, you asked, do you have anything you want to share with me?
Right.
Because I might have talked to my owner, forgot some of the stuff that, is not listed in the listing that you can understand. And then I'm going to share, this is what I'm using. And whether you use it or not, at least it gives you an idea of why I came up and how I came up with the value.
Right.
Knock on wood, everything's been great so far. But that, I think, is a great relationship, trying not to We're not trying to kill the deal. We're not trying to hide anything. We're trying to find like, well, this is how I came up with it. Because the more and more you show up to these appointments, the more and more you're providing stuff, the more and more I'm learning to get better information to my client, but learning the whole process, what's going to happen when you come. Because we don't know who's going to show up. We don't know we don't know if it's a newbie. But here's the other piece I wanted to ask you is because I've heard from you and many, many appraisers, this is a dying industry. There are less and less appraisers. I'm actually seeing a lot of the same ones. I think there's, and they're great. It's wonderful because they've been in the business quite some time and understand it, and I can call them for questions and stuff. But what are you seeing in your field?
They're really trying to get artificial intelligence into this field.
In what manner?
Do the appraisal.
They're going to be giving Zestimates.
And the whole thing is artificial intelligence is just that, artificial.
It is.
Yep.
There have been court cases where lawyers have been, I don't know the word they use to punish a lawyer and fined, because he was using artificial intelligence in his the case that was completely made up by artificial intelligence. It would never happened.
Well, you know, I've gone into properties and all these estimates that the consumer finds online, I've come in a lot higher. Because we don't know how old that data is that's on there, right? So you not being able to get inside to see it or to hear, how do you know when all this renovation was done or the things you can't see? You can't see the roof. You don't know the stuff. You know, you're not an expert. You're not a code, you know. So
I mean, I agree. I feel like there are careers that cannot be replaced with robots and artificial intelligence. And you know, I for one am very happy with the cameras on the highway that I don't need to stop at the tolls anymore for. That I'm sorry for the toll workers, but that might have been one that was easier to replace. But I think that where an opinion is required, unless they have a robot coming into your house,
and not even
who is then taking that information and putting it in some kind of human monitored system, it's still going to be lacking.
I've been approached by different appraisal management companies. Do you want to be an inspector for us? You go do the inspection of the property, give the info to us, and we'll have someone do it. I says, hold on a second. After 40 years of appraising, I'm going to go do an inspection for someone who's probably never done an appraisal? I say, no, I'm not going to do it. But there are more and more appraisals of desktop. You don't see the property. You go by public records and or just drive-bys. Go by, take a picture, and that's it. Those were happening quite a bit, but lately I've seen over the past, say, 2-3 months, a lot more full appraisals. For whatever reason, I'm not sure, but I've seen a lot more.
So a lot you don't see in the back of a house. There's a lot you don't see within the house. The public records doesn't tell the whole picture and the whole story. And that's why I need to go look at these properties. So how can I give value and list the property without it? How do you give value as an appraiser? Thank goodness, you do measurements and all that. But
well, Lana, I think that our job is very important because you're going into MLS and you're looking at comparables and it's based on the data that's been supplied by listing agents. So sometimes you've got somebody who wants the photos after the closing to be removed because they aren't comfortable with the public having, images of the inside of their house. Well, as soon as they've done that, what could have been a very valuable comp no longer exists because there's one image which you get by driving by. But that being said, when the data that is supplied in MLS is not accurate, it's also having an impact. I feel like I've gone into a house that was used as a comp on an appraisal, and I was thinking, well, those pictures looked really good, but I saw the inside, and that house no way near was comparable to this other property. But if you were only looking at it on MLS, you would see a different picture. So I think what we do, is definitely going to have an impact on what you do.
Absolutely. I love the interior pictures you guys have. Remember at one time MLS wasn't online, did the books. We spent a lot of time at the MLS building in Fitchburg with the comp books. But I don't go by just MLS. Any property, sale, listing, whatever I use from MLS, I look up the field card too.
Yes.
And support, what I'm putting to the appraisal with the field card
Another thing
and the
that's
deed.
not always accurate.
Not always accurate. You're right. But there's only so much we can do. We
Right.
can't,
But you
Right.
also call us.
Yeah.
I get calls from appraisers
Yeah.
Me
every
too.
week, and they say, "Can you tell me a little bit about this property? I'm comping something, and yours sold so much higher than, or so much lower, or what happened here." There's a lot of value for that, but there's a lot of
I
agents.
love those calls.
Yeah, because I like to hear. What was happening? But I think there's a collaboration with us and appraisers,
Right.
and I'm hoping that. The appraisers don't go away because this is giving us value for our next sale.
Right.
So,
Right.
I'm hoping it doesn't go away till I retire. I retire.
I agree. I hope that nothing changes with this industry. We need you.
yes.
We value your experience. Love that you were here with us today.
Yeah.
Thank
Well, it's
you
my
so
pleasure.
very
Thank you.
much.
My pleasure.
I know this was kind of last minute, and this was great.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's-
Thank you for
it's a good
coming.
time.
And so I'm going to wrap this up.
Yep.
So, if anybody is looking, well, first of all, you must like and subscribe
Yes.
and comment if there's content, questions, things like that we could be able to help you with. You can reach Lana and I at Coldwell Banker in Leominster. And to reach Randy, he is with ICL Appraisals. And where's your appraisal office?
Right out of my house in Leominster.
In Leominster.
Yeah.
It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch.
I wish, because it's getting too big for me.
Thank
I do
you,
love the
Randy.
Randy.
Thank you.
pleasure.
This was really great.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you so
time.
much.
Thank you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I'm going to go do a drive-by now.
There
All
you
right.
go.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.